A few years ago, early one morning, I noticed myself doing something without thinking. Nothing dramatic, nothing anyone else would have even noticed, but in that moment, I recognized a pattern in myself that really unsettled me, partly because it felt so normal. I'm an early riser. It was maybe 5 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk downstairs with a cup of coffee, just waking up, scrolling through the news. Some headline caught my eye, and before I had even finished reading, I noticed myself starting to feel something. It wasn't a full thought in my head, really. It was more like a reflex, some annoyance, maybe a bit of defensiveness thrown in. My body was already ahead of my mind. I realized that I had gotten used to having opinions about things I hardly understood. I was already caught up in a conflict, an argument I hadn't even heard of 5 minutes before. But what struck me the most was how normal it felt. Maybe that's one of the less obvious changes in how we live now. We've always had opinions. Having very strong feelings is nothing new. But now it feels like there's always something new pulling at us, urging us to jump in right away. More headlines, more arguments, more pictures and videos, more breaking news, more exposure to other people's anger, grief, fear, pride, and certainty. All of it asking in its own way, what do you think? Whose side are you on? Are you angry yet? Are you scared yet? I'm not sure we've really stopped to ask what that does to a person deep down. What happens to someone who's taught to react to everything before they've had a chance to even understand anything? That question sits at the heart of this episode. There's a real difference between responding and reacting. A response usually comes after you've had time to see what's really going on, after listening and waiting and asking questions, after letting those first waves of information pass through without jumping to act on it. A reaction is quicker. It's what happens when your body gets there before your better judgment, exactly as I had noticed myself doing that morning. Now, sometimes a reaction is absolutely necessary. If your kid steps out into the road, you aren't going to pause to think about it. You move. If a pot's boiling over on the stove, you pull it off the heat. There are moments when immediate action is not only useful, but imperative. Not every disagreement calls for immediate reaction, though. Not every headline needs your opinion. Not every event in the world is asking for you to jump in right away. After nearly 30 years living and working with and inside platforms, I know they aren't neutral. A lot of what shows up on these platforms is meant to stir us up. The picture is chosen to catch your eye and get you worked up. The post, the story, the news article. So much of it is written to push you to take a side, before you've even had the chance to stop and ask whether the side makes any sense at all. Not every time, not every platform, and certainly not everyone who posts, but often enough to start shaping the narratives that we hear daily. And before long, if you're not careful, you just keep closing the loop. You feel something, you click, you judge, you share, then you move on. Then the next thing shows up. And the next. It's a strange way to live if you stop and think about it. Always informed, but rarely rooted. Always connected, but not always present. Always aware, but not often wise. And it's easy to lose your footing that way. I have a history with panic disorder, so I'm careful about making simple, broad claims here, but I do think years spent close to these systems changed me more than I realized. That's part of what I'm trying to work through here. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just someone who's seen it up close. I keep thinking about the difference between fear and attention. I think about this a lot when I'm working around the house. Just regular upkeep stuff, hanging a ceiling fan or maybe trimming some bushes. That kind of work calls for a level of respect. If you're not careful, you can get hurt. But you learn not to confuse attention with getting worked up. You don't drop your tools and run just because electricity can hurt you. You turn off the power. You take your time. You keep your head, and you get the new fan up. And you don't drop your shears and go running just because there might be a yellow jacket's nest in the bushes. You put on your gloves and jeans and a long sleeve shirt, whatever you've got, and then you get to work. Carefully. You keep your eyes open, you pay attention. And that sort of attention isn't fear. It's just doing what needs to be done. You don't have to stay wound up to care. Life online can make those lines hard to see. It gives us warning after warning, but not many real ways to respond. Your body gets ready to act, but life itself stays still. You sit in a chair, phone in hand, heart speeding up over things that you can't even touch. Some of those far-off events matter a lot. And I'm not saying that we should hide out in our basements and pretend the rest of the world isn't real. That wouldn't be much better. But we just weren't made to live like the whole world is happening right in front of us, every hour of every day. When everything feels urgent, not much gets understood. And that's where jumping in too quickly starts to cost us, because it doesn't just shape what we say, it shapes what we notice. If I spend enough time reacting, I start to see the world differently. I look for trouble quicker, I look for the hidden angle or the hustle. I look for the side I'm supposed to be on. After a while, even ordinary things can start to feel loaded. Some stranger turns into a stereotype. A neighbor is a surrogate for something bigger. A person becomes just a position. And once that happens, you move from listening to hearing. You think you already know who and what they are. That's what quick reaction does to a room. It shrinks it. It flattens people out before you've even had a chance to see who they really are. I think about what this environment must be teaching our children. Kids don't just learn facts from us. They learn rhythm. They watch how quickly the adults around them move from hearing something to having a strong feeling about it. They learn whether uncertainty is bearable. They learn whether silence is safe, or whether disagreement always means a fight. And right now, much of the world seems to be teaching the wrong lessons. React fast. Don't get caught not knowing. Don't get caught without a side. That's not much to build on. It's not fertile ground for planting knowledge. Wisdom is slow. It needs time, perspective, sometimes huge mistakes and lots of embarrassment. Sometimes just the plain humility to say something simple. I don't know enough yet. That might be one of the most important things we can learn to say now. It isn't a weakness. It isn't apathy. To me, it is the beginning, the bedrock of wisdom. It's how you leave room to learn something new, to be curious, to see things from another angle, to let reality have its say before you move on. And maybe that's why words still need to carry weight. These days, you don't get much for saying those words out loud. Most corners of the internet reward being sure, being quick, lining up with the crowd. Over time, we get good at living in that kind of world, reading the room, picking up on tone, figuring out what opinion is wanted in that moment. But those aren't the skills that help you live well for the long haul. Living well takes patience, busloads of understanding, a bit of memory, the kind of listening where you're not just waiting for your turn to talk. The ability to let a feeling pass through without letting it steer you. Those skills don't show up all at once. You pick them up in small, real places, around a kitchen table, from the people you work with, in the kinds of talks that you can't walk away from, even when they're really tough. Living in a real community teaches you that words matter, because there's still a person standing there after you say them. A screen seems to teach the exact opposite lesson. It says words are throwaway. The outrage will fade, and the next crisis will show up soon enough to keep you from sitting with the last one for very long. But sometimes it's worth letting things stew for a while, letting reality have its say before we move on. Attention is one of the few things we really get to spend in this life. Once it's gone, it doesn't come back. There are people and places that need us. Real ones. Our children, our spouses, our neighbors, the towns we live in. ourselves too. Still, a lot of life now seems to pull us towards the next news cycle, the next emergency. Some are real, some are inflated. They want our feelings, but don't give us much to do with them. When every crisis feels like it's next door, it gets harder to care for what's actually happening beside you. What I would call the near things, our homes, our work, people right in front of us. That's where our attention belongs first. The right here things. It is where most of us learn what it means to be a human being. Not exclusively necessarily, but first. That's where that pause starts to matter the most. So maybe a little resistance starts with learning to slow down that first reaction. Just enough to let judgment catch up. Read before you answer, wait before you share. Let the headlines settle and let the real message settle in too. Try not to mix up urgency with importance, and try not to let every far-off argument or conflict take over the room where your real life is happening. The world will keep giving us reasons to react. But if all we do is react, it doesn't add up to much of a life. It's just one collision after another. I don't want to pass that kind of life down to Caroline, my daughter. I don't want her to grow up thinking every silence is a danger or that every hard question needs an answer right away, if it even has one. Not everything is good or bad, black or white. I want her to know some questions need time, some feelings need patience, some thoughts need quiet before we can tell if they're even true. Truth is, I want that for all of us, not just her. The next time you feel yourself reacting right away to something you just saw online, a headline or a post or somebody's comment, pause and ask yourself just one question before you do anything with that feeling. Do I know enough yet? Maybe the answer is yes. Again, sometimes action really is needed, but sometimes the honest answer will be no, not yet. That little bit of wiggle room might be enough to keep your reaction from running the show. Before we finish, I wanted to mention there's a companion article for this episode over on Substack. If you'd like to read more or share your thoughts, I invite you to join me over there. If something in this episode brought someone to mind, please consider sharing it. I'm William Cardy. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. And wherever you are, I hope this episode helped you slow down long enough to notice your own life.